I don't think I would have survived because it was such a severe attack. Yeah, without the plasma saved my life.
The level crossing between two villages in Oxfordshire set to close over safety concerns. Some say it will increase journey times and leave others isolated.
Also this Tuesday, an abundance of autumn berries, a boost for birds. But what's behind this year's bumper season?
And with 35 sleeps until Christmas, Santa pays a special visit on an unusual mode of transport. Good evening. The South's only blood plasma donation clinic in Reading is calling for thousands more donors. It's raising awareness of how easy it is to donate plasma and save lives.
Yes, one of those who owes his life to plasma donation is Mark Hobbs from Hampshire. The father of two spent almost a year in hospital after being paralysed by a rare condition that attacked his nervous system. But thanks to treatment, he's starting to walk again. Well, Rachel Hepworth went to meet him.
It's really a miracle that Mark Hobbs is back on his feet. Less than 2 years ago, the 57-year-old was struck down with a mystery illness that paralysed his entire body in a matter of hours.
I was in ICU on full life support by 10 o'clock that night.
Well, it was terrifying. He just went to work and then came home 300 days later.
Unable to breathe, move or speak, he was diagnosed with the rare Guillain-Barré syndrome, known as GBS, an autoimmune disorder that attacks the nervous system. He was given immunoglobulin treatment containing healthy antibodies made from donated plasma.
Without that, I don't think I would have survived because it was such a severe attack. Yeah, without the plasma saved my life.
The treatment gave him a chance, but he's had to retrain every muscle in his body, from tiny hand movements, hydrotherapy sessions, to finally and painfully starting to walk again.
Learning to stand when you have no strength whatsoever is one of the hardest things I've done, and I've worked in construction all my life. They did say there'd be a lot of pain, which there was.
So determined mentally, and the children are. They want Dad back how he was.
You just get stronger and stronger, a very, very slow process.
Hello! The couple are now backing a campaign to raise awareness of how easy it is to donate plasma. The main centre in the south is in Reading, where they're looking to recruit 2,500 donors.
It's similar to donating blood. It takes around 35 to 45 minutes. It's life-saving, so that the plasma is then used to treat over 50 diseases.
Donating blood locally also supports the campaign, as extracted plasma can also be used in medicines, a lifeline for thousands of people in the south, just like Mark.
Hopefully it'll be a full recovery and I'll be back at work and it should be sort of like a bad dream, like it never happened. With a bit of luck.
Rachel Hepworth, ITV News.
And we wish you all the best, Mark. Well, in other news, a man has appeared in court after a woman was raped in a churchyard in Oxford. The woman, who's in her 20s, was attacked in the early hours of Sunday morning in the grounds of St Clement's off Marston Road. 46-year-old Khaliz Ali Ashimari of Ganoba Road has been charged with rape.
Police have returned to the site of a huge cannabis factory they raided in Winchester's city centre. Officers seized thousands of plants from a building on Upper Brook Street yesterday morning. The area was blocked off while the plants were taken away and destroyed. A 54-year-old man arrested has been bailed until February.
Speeding offences in the Thames Valley have almost doubled in the past 6 months compared to last year. That's according to new figures from Thames Valley Police, where drivers caught distracted rose by 78%. The number of fatal collisions has fallen slightly. In the first 6 months of 2023, the force had more than 500,000 calls from the public and made 16,000 arrests.
Bosses at Frimley Park Hospital in Surrey say a completely different location is needed rather than redeveloping the current hospital site. It needs to be replaced because around 65% of it is made of rack, the less durable concrete. But in a report, bosses said building a new hospital in the same place would cause too much congestion, disruption and wouldn't be possible by the deadline of 2030. They're now on the lookout for a new location.
Campaigners in Oxfordshire are calling for a key road between two villages to be maintained amid plans to close a level crossing.
Well, talks are ongoing about what will happen on Sandy Lane, which links Kidlington and Yarnton. But residents have been speaking to ITV News Meridian about the importance of the route for people who use it regularly.
Well, Network Rail says closing the crossing and two others in the area will improve safety and increase capacity on the railway. With more on this, here's Mark McQuillan.
This road separates two villages in Oxfordshire. On it, a level crossing which divides opinion. Many have concerns over safety, while others stress the importance of the route between Kidlington and Yarnton. The crossing is set to close next year, but what exactly happens to the road afterwards is still uncertain. At Yarnton Village Hall, these local residents want a smooth transition and to be able to travel freely along Sandy Lane even after the crossing closes.
Yes, we've got to have a high-speed train, so put a bridge over it like they do in other places. I mean, it is really an essential link between Yarnton and Kidlington, and I think we're going to end up isolating people if we remove it.
I've got a daughter that works the other side of the crossing, and so if it closes, she's got to go all the way round.
This member of Yarnton Parish Council is increasingly confident the route will be maintained. David Brown has outlined why reaching that outcome is important.
It's the shortest link between here and Kidlington. I know it's a twisty road as it stands at the moment, and everybody would agree that it needs upgrading in various ways. But if you don't go that way, you will have to drive round 2 miles there and 2 miles back. That's 3,000 vehicles a day doing that. That's an awful lot of extra miles and extra expense.
Network Rail say this is about improving safety for everyone and have told us in a statement following a public consultation earlier this year, Network Rail continue to work on plans to close the level crossings at Yarnton, Tackley and here at Sandy Lane and replace them with alternative ways of crossing the railway to maximise the benefits of the Oxfordshire Connect programme. They describe that programme as a joint strategy to transform the railway across Oxfordshire and beyond. Residents, businesses and the wider community will now have to wait. Many want a swift resolution. A final decision on what will happen to the route is expected in the coming months. Mark McQuillan, ITV News.
Meanwhile, building a new railway line in West Oxfordshire would be possible, but would come at a significant cost, according to a study by Oxfordshire County Council. It said a new route connecting Carterton, Witney and Ensham to Oxford would save around 70% on journey times, but there would be environmental issues and would cost between £700 and £900 million. The council says more work is now needed, including a public consultation.
Now, rare birds and butterflies on the Oxfordshire-Buckinghamshire border will benefit from a bespoke home costing £230,000. The local Wildlife Trust is creating the habitat for endangered curlews at its Gallows Bridge Farm Nature Reserve. It will have new pools, security cameras and anti-predator fencing.
You're watching ITV News Meridian here in the Thames Valley. Coming up, when gambling gets out of control, the man who lost thousands in one night, the concerns new affordability checks would have a catastrophic impact on horse racing.
And bursting with berries, record numbers this season. But why are they so important to our ecosystems?
And for more, go to itv.com/Meridian. You can call us on 0808 1010 095 and remember to follow us on social media.
Now, a mother whose daughter took her own life following a year of physical and emotional domestic abuse at the hands of her ex-partner is now calling for a change in the law.
Chloe Holland, who was 23 and from Portsmouth, died in February, a year after beginning a relationship with Mark Masterton. He's been jailed for 3.5 years.
Chloe's mother Sharon is now calling for perpetrators of coercive control to face manslaughter charges.
Well, Sharon has joined us in the studio. Such a difficult subject for you to talk about. We'll hear more about your campaign in just a moment. Okay. But first, tell us about Chloe.
Chloe was a ray of sunshine, very energetic, very loving, would do anything for anyone. Very polite as well. She's a nice girl.
And Chloe had known Mark since school, hadn't she? And they began a relationship, but things quickly changed. Yeah. Tell us about what Chloe had experienced before she'd taken her own life.
Yeah, all I knew was that he had hit her a few times because she sent me some pictures. I've since found out more since she took her own life, and he controlled what she wore, you know, her makeup, her Facebooks, her phones, contact with friends, contacts with families, and I think financial as well.
And you hadn't met Mark, had you? And they hadn't been together very long.
No, they were. I knew about the relationship in May, but they'd actually been together since January, and then I think they split up roughly about end of December, beginning of January.
Now, Mark was convicted of coercive and controlling behaviour, and he got 41 months. That's 3.5 years. Yeah. So what are you campaigning for now?
What I'm campaigning for is for him to get the charge, or perpetrators like him, of manslaughter, because with the coercive controlling behaviour, he was telling her to take her own life. So to me, he's coerced her into doing that, and he's contributed to her death.
Now, you have the support of Portsmouth City Council with your campaign. So what happens next? What do you do?
Trying to get the signatures for this petition. We are emailing all the MPs in the country and councillors as well, and hopefully to get to Parliament and ask them to consider changing legislation.
And how many signatures do you need for that?
10,000 for it to be recognised, and 100,000 for it actually to be debated in Parliament.
How are you in the months after Chloe's death? How are you processing this? How are you coming to terms with what happened? Because this must be giving you a focus.
Yeah, I think because I'm in fight mode at the moment and I'm blocking out what's happened, that's what's keeping me going. I think once it's all over, that's when I can actually grieve. I can't grieve until this is over.
And with this campaign that you've launched, you've also found that there's a network of people. You've really got support from other people who've experienced something similar to you.
Yes, I'm speaking to other families who've had exactly the same thing happen to them for exactly the same reason, and that's to men and women, not just women. And a lot of them haven't had any justice at all for their loved ones.
And what would you say to anyone out there watching this who may recognise something that happened to Chloe, or concerned family members?
I think, you know, to always stay in contact and notice if they go silent, or notice if they're not answering messages, and to always be there for them, because I didn't know everything that was going on, and to report it.
Well, Sharon, we'll follow your campaign. Thank you so much for coming in to tell us about it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, for advice and support on the issues discussed, do go to itv.com/Britain Get Talking.
Now, a man who lost all his money when his gambling got out of control says we need to lose the stigma surrounding the issue.
Figures released today by the charity Gamble Aware show 2 out of 3 people who have experienced any gambling problems have never spoken about it.
There are plans to introduce affordability checks, but the British horse racing industry has launched a petition urging the government to halt them, saying it will have a catastrophic impact on horse racing. Joe Caution has been looking at the issue.
Matt started gambling casually on the football with friends while at university. But it was once he graduated and started working away that the odd flutter turned into an obsession. And in one night, he lost everything.
I was gambling sort of 16, 17 hours a day. So when I wasn't working, all I was doing was gambling. It felt like the only kind of purpose that I had. People don't understand that it's an addiction. People don't understand that it's not just a case of stop. I think that was another thing as well. I think people would have just said to me, well, just stop, just don't do that anymore. And it wasn't that easy. Had it been, obviously, I would have done that.
8 years on from being hospitalised by his addiction, Matt's working with charities to encourage others to speak out. But gambling thousands of pounds a day, he would have been one of those subject to stricter affordability checks in the government's plans to protect bettors. It proposes those who lose at least £125 in 30 days or £500 in a year could be subject to background checks, with more scrutiny from credit reference agencies and bank statements for users who lose thousands of pounds in a short space of time.
Every walk of life where you're spending that sort of money, you get means checked. Most of the people listening to this will have a credit card. Nobody can spend money they haven't got. Well, they can spend money they haven't got, but within reason, because they're actually checked how much they can afford. You can open up a gambling account and lose all your money overnight, and money you haven't even got yet. So we really need to protect people.
But the horse racing industry has launched a petition against what they call inappropriate and discriminatory checks on sports betting. They say jobs could be indirectly impacted at stables and at racecourses like Goodwood and Ascot. Here's what the boss of Brighton Racecourse thinks.
What that essentially saying is that if you lose about a packet, equivalent of a packet and a quarter of cigarettes a day, and the particular point here is that actually this has been signposted for over 2 years now, and there's zero evidence it's had any impact on gambling related harm, and there's lots of evidence to say that people have stopped betting, the consequences of which horse racing has suffered.
The petition is close to reaching the 100,000 signatures needed to be debated in Parliament. But the government says they are committed to a sustainable future for horse racing, whilst taking steps to minimise the risk of gambling-related harm. Joe Caution, ITV News.
Well, Dr Ellie Cannon knows about the problems of gambling and the treatment available for problem gamblers, as she's an NHS doctor but specialises in addiction. And Dr Cannon, that word addiction, is gambling in that sense like drink or drugs?
Yes, absolutely. We know, of course, that gambling can be very addictive. One of the problems with gambling particularly is that it's often a hidden addiction. So whereas with drug or alcohol use, of course, people tend to know, they tend to see you using those substances. With gambling, it's often hidden. People isolate themselves. People don't necessarily know that their loved ones or their friends may be involved because it is very easy to hide.
And because of that, is it more serious, do you think, than drink and drugs?
Well, gambling harms can be incredibly serious. Of course, we know about the financial side of things, but it can also cause mental health problems, physical health problems, issues within families, relationship breakdowns. And we know that it's not just the person gambling, but often their loved ones who are also victims of gambling harms as well. So unfortunately, it's a very wide-ranging problem in terms of the harms that it can cause.
Are there any actual causes for the addiction, or is it just something like you said, the financial side? I mean, what starts people up gambling?
There's often many different reasons. I mean, unfortunately, for example, we know that families and communities who are affected by the cost of living crisis are more likely to be affected by gambling harms. We know in the last few years there's been a change and a massive increase in the number of women gambling, possibly because gambling is so accessible now on smartphones and at home rather than what it used to be like where you had to go to a bookmaker's. So there's lots of different reasons why people get involved.
Briefly, what do you think can be done? What are perhaps your tips to help people?
Well, I'm working with Gamble Aware today for people to really understand that talking about gambling, breaking opening these conversations, breaking the stigma is really the first and most important step for people. Having that conversation, looking at Gamble Aware online and seeing the tools that are available can really, really help, because there's too much stigma and shame around gambling harms at the moment.
Dr. Ellie Cannon, really good to talk to you today. Thank you very much for your time.
Now, it's been announced that the Isle of Wight is to get a £13 million boost from the government's Levelling Up Fund. It'll provide cycling, walking and bus routes from Rye to Yarmouth on the island Green Link. It aims to help residents and visitors get across the island, and it's hoped it will unlock potential for new housing and jobs. It's one of 55 projects across the country to get a share of nearly £1 billion in the latest round of funding.
Well, Gatwick Airport's new look railway station is open to passengers following multi-million-pound refurbishment work. There are 8 new escalators and 5 new lifts to improve accessibility. There are also more ticket gates and a dedicated passenger assistance point. It's hoped the changes will encourage more passengers to travel to the airport using sustainable public transport.
Now, you may have noticed when out and about in the countryside that there has been an abundance of hawthorn berries this autumn. They look pretty, of course, but the bright red fruits provide food for up to 300 native wildlife species.
And the Woodland Trust says weather patterns this year have been the cause of record numbers of berries across our region, but it warns it could be an indicator of our climate becoming more extreme. With more on this, here's Nick Smith.
Rich red hawthorn berries are the staple of a healthy autumn season. Members of the Woodland Trust monitor their yearly crop across hundreds of sites in the southeast, where they're recording numbers not seen for more than 20 years.
The crop for hawthorn's really good this year. People are seeing that across the region. The hawthorn berry crop probably started way back in spring, so it must have been a good year for flowers, and then they must have been well pollinated. And then the year has been good just to develop the berries, so it's probably down to warm weather, wet weather, and at just the right sort of amounts.
As a native species, hawthorn trees have been part of our folklore for centuries, with generations claiming that an abundance of berries means that we're in for a harsh winter. But their numbers are actually a much better indicator of how weather patterns have performed over the past year.
Well, in this patch particularly, the hawthorns have been planted by a community project, but you can find hawthorn trees all over the country.
Alex Marshall is a citizen scientist monitoring hawthorn tree health on this site near Andover, and has been giving me an insight into why they're so integral to our ecosystems. Well, I can see an abundance of hawthorn berries in the tree just down here, so let's take a bit of a closer look and you can explain a bit more about them. Yeah. So, first of all, tell me why they're so important in a habitat like this one.
They're really important because they provide sources for animals, fieldfares and redwings, and also small mammals. And they also provide a seed source, so natural regeneration across the landscape. We've also seen a late autumn this year, and that's referring to the temperature of the environment. So it's been warmer for longer throughout the year, and this can be worrying because of delaying hibernation for certain species.
Obviously, we've seen a bumper crop this year, so tell me who's actually recording all this data.
So this data is being recorded by citizen scientists as part of a project called Nature's Calendar, and they've been recording species events such as first flower, first fruit. It allows us to look at the trends between wildlife and climate.
Our ancient woodlands are among our most important habitats, and the humble hawthorn can help preserve the pockets which still exist in our countryside. While a bumper year for them can bring short-term benefits, it can also be an indicator of a changing climate, which is why those studying our landscape will keep a close eye on their numbers in the years to come. Nick Smith, ITV News.
Those berries looking very wintry there and almost festive, and there's no getting away from it. The festive season is on its way. Yesterday we had people flinging Christmas trees. Today we have Santa on a lawnmower.
Yeah, the big build-up is underway, isn't it? And with 35 sleeps until the big day, Santa has made an early stop in Sussex to spread some joy at a grotto run by a charity. Andy Dickinson was there too.
Have a holly jolly Christmas, it's the best time.
Christmas has arrived a little early at this nursery in Hassocks. Santa's transport fresh from mowing some late autumn grass. His new grotto complete with all the trimmings. Can you tell me what was it like meeting Santa?
Yes, it was really good meeting Santa. You keep looking around in the grotto.
I love meeting him because I love his grotto.
I loved it to see Santa because it's very nice.
The Budding Foundation works to improve the lives of young people struggling with social deprivation, trauma or disabilities. Their grotto's such a mainstay, a couple will renew their vows here at the weekend. After 50 years of marriage, Santa also a lay preacher.
We have to remember that it's the time that we celebrate the coming of Jesus as a tiny baby. So we celebrate that, but we can also have a lot of fun through me, Father Christmas. It's a time for fun, a time when we can forget, just for a little while, some of the cares that we have.
Yes, Christmas is a special time of year to us. We raise a lot of our money for the charity at Christmas time, and we support local young people in need, and it's nice that that money can be returned to the community.
The charity giving away 1,000 free tickets to help families in poverty bring their children over the next 6 weeks. It's also providing £10,000 to local food banks. Andy Dickinson, ITV News, Hassocks.
I like the lawnmower. Good way to travel, isn't
exactly.
it?
Now, staying with the festive theme, and Winchester has been named one of the prettiest places to go at Christmas. Now, the Times newspaper named it as number 4 in the UK when it came to festive shopping. One of the selling points was the Christmas market at the cathedral, the ice rink and all the independent shops. Very pretty.
It's not surprising, is it, though? It
No,
is a very
no big
pretty
surprise.
city, really. Now, away from Christmas, and if you look towards the sky tonight in Oxfordshire, you won't see Father Christmas just yet. You might be able to spot an item of lost property encircling the Earth.
Yeah, well, 3 weeks ago, NASA astronauts accidentally dropped a toolkit in space while carrying out repairs on the International Space Station, as you do. But despite going back, they couldn't find it.
Whoops, so the bag was pictured days later by a Japanese astronaut as he flew over Mount Fuji. Well, the small but highly reflective bag is travelling through the sky at speed. So with the help of binoculars, the bright bag is expected to be visible above Oxfordshire tonight. I think that's just amazing.
Yeah.
Imagine just seeing that, just a bag.
Well, a tall
floating
bag
around.
going at 17,000 miles an hour, orbiting the Earth. What could go wrong?
Who knows?
And lots of weather to contend with too. James Wright has the details for us.
Whatever the weather, it always feels like home. Valent Heat Pumps and Boilers sponsor ITV Meridian Weather.
Hi there, good evening. Not too bad a day today. Some nice bright and sunny spells, essentially dry too. And it's partly because of this high pressure system. Haven't seen one of these for a bit. But where it positions itself starts to siphon down some cold air for a couple of days. So possibly the first chilly spell, or proper chilly spell, that we've had this autumn winter. More of the cloud this evening starting to melt back. Breeze dropping out a touch as a result. Might see one or two mist patches here and there. Later on in the night, some high cloud moving through. That should help lift that. It also stops the temperatures falling too far. That said, because of the clear skies early on, it is actually going to be pretty chilly. Lows of around 4 to 6 Celsius. Somewhere in the Thames Valley might go in a rural spot down to 1 to 3 Celsius. Tomorrow then, not a bad day, bit like today really. Not exactly wall-to-wall sunshine, but some decent bright and sunny spells from time to time. That cloud just turning over through the day. Lighter breezes for many places, still a bit of a draft going through the English Channel there, but we're still looking at highs of around 10 or 11 Celsius, which isn't too bad. Now, as far as Thursday goes, actually gets a little bit milder, getting up into the teens, but you can see this cold front drifting down from the north. Quite a few isobars, so the breeze is going to start picking up. That, by Friday, starts to push away from us to the south, and it opens up the gateway to much cooler air. Not too breezy, but it's a much chillier source. So on Friday, we're looking at highs of around 9 or 10 Celsius. As you head into Saturday, well, that's when the frost will arrive and the chillier temperatures.
Valent Heat Pumps and Boilers sponsor ITV Meridian Weather.
Oh, that looks cold, doesn't it? Far too chilly. Now, in just a moment, the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Matt is here with our late bulletin, but from the whole team, have a good evening. See you again tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
A tragic end in the search for 4 teenagers missing in North Wales as their bodies are found. The boys were discovered in the car they'd been driving on a camping trip in Snowdonia. When they failed to come home, the alarm was raised and the desperate search began.
Police officers attended and located a Ford Fiesta vehicle on its roof, partially submerged in water. Tragically, the bodies of 4 young males were recovered from within the vehicle.
The 4 friends from Shrewsbury were studying for their A-levels at college there. Police say they died as the result of a tragic accident. Also tonight, growing hopes of a temporary truce between Israel and Hamas that could mean freedom for at least some of the hostages. We have the latest. At 7, the cost of living crisis up close. Ahead of the Chancellor's autumn statement, the families still struggling to make ends meet. Almost 10 days underground. First glimpse of 41 Indian road workers trapped in a collapsed tunnel. But how will they get them out? And
I look back and I think, wow, how have I got through that? Because it was that bad.
Ronnie the Rocket Uncut, the new documentary charging the extraordinary rise, fall and rise again of snooker's brightest star.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. Police have tonight confirmed the worst fears of the family and friends of 4 teenagers who disappeared in North Wales. All the young men were found dead in a car in what appears to have been a tragic accident. Jevon Hurst, Harvey Owen, Wilf Henderson and Hugo Morris were last seen on Sunday morning. The A-level students had travelled from Shrewsbury to go camping in the Welsh mountains. It prompted a massive search involving police, Coast Guard and mountain rescue teams. Our Wales reporter Rhys Williams is at the scene. And Rhys, the worst possible outcome.
Yeah, truly awful, Mary. This